All right, we're back. We are COMP397. That's web game programming in the fall 2017 semester, and we're week 3, part 1 of our broadcast. I want to talk about a concept, a design pattern that I recommend you use for your games called finite state machine. Okay, has anyone heard of the finite state machine design pattern? Yes. You can use it for a couple things, not just for moving between screens. Remember, we're not Unity again, so we're going back to basic TypeScript, right? So think about moving between one screen and another. How do you do that? How do you move between one screen and another? As a container, right? Think about what we want to do. We want to have a switch in that if I'm in one scene, I want to be able to go to the next scene. Now, this is going to be multiple classes. I'm going to do it this week, a little bit started, and I'm going to go to next week because of how complex it can be, right? But once we get this done, then everything will flow from this, right? I could start with movement, but then I'm going to have to introduce finite state machine later, and it'll be too late for you to create multiple, like a start screen, a middle screen, and an end screen. So I'm going to start with the hard stuff and then work to movement and everything else in the following weeks. Also, just to point out, I do have some older videos online. They are applicable with COMP397. So if you want to get a jump on movement and all that kind of stuff, you can look at my older videos on YouTube. All right, so what are we building today? So where we left off, we had this going on. And next week, we're not going to do any more. There's no more presentations next week. We need some time to do some work together, and that's what I'm going to be doing with you. So I'm here in my project folder. I'm going to do light-server. And again, this is assuming that you guys are fully operational now. And it says cannot get. Oh, I love that. Yay. Why can it not get? Because I'm probably not in the right folder. Let's try that again. I'm not in the right folder for sure. I'm in assets. I want to be in here and try that. There we go. All right, so here we are. Last time we made this click me, hello world. But what if I want to be able to go from one screen to another? First of all, we have to define what screens are, right? And they're just containers. So if I look at my Visual Studio Code, I have my core folder. And in my core folder, I have a bunch of stuff here that maybe, well, I don't need. Like, for example, I definitely need to do this setup. I'm going to do this setup one time. I'm not going to set up my manifest and my stage and all this kind of stuff over and over again. But I do need something else. So I want to start with a container. All right. Now, Create.js, from an easel perspective, if you look at easel.js documentation, so if I say easel.js docs, right? And if you go there, I'm going to point you to where I'm looking so you understand where I'm going with this thing. It's this idea of container. So the container class is interesting in that it allows me to create an object that can contain other objects. Okay? So it's very base. The container will stretch to fit any object that's inside of it. In fact, if anything, it is an array, another display list. That's what it is. And it actually inherits from display list. If you look up here, it extends the display list class, right? That means it's similar to a stage, right? So I want to take my container, my game, I want to make a new game container, right? But I want to extend the idea of the container. So first we'll just make a container, and then I want to start making something called the scene class, okay? I want to make a new scene class. And my scenes will be an extension of the container, right? With an update function, right? So what I can do is I can switch between scenes, right? Each scene, though, will be a container that I can add children to, just like I do everything else, okay? So this is the basic syntax, all right? Try this out. Let's make a new container. And if you're following me here, I'm in game.ts inside this project template that we've been using over the last couple weeks to the top of my file where I have some example assets. I've got a click button and a hello label. I want to add in this new container. I want to use let game container. We'll call it game container for now, right? It's not really quite a scene yet, but my game container is going to be of type createjs.container. Okay, so it's just a container. Think of it as a box or an array, a display list. And what I want to do is I want to take my game container and immediately add it to my stage right away. So on line 36, I'm going to take away this console log for a second, right? And on line 36, I'm going to add the containers to the stage. I'm going to say, first of all, I'm going to define it. Game container is equal to a new create.js container. Okay, and it needs nothing. Look, it doesn't need anything. It just makes a space for itself, right? Okay, fine. Now I'm going to add it to the stage. I'm going to say, so game container, or sorry, stage, sorry, dot add child game container. Hey, it's on, right? So we've got our game container on the stage. Now, instead of adding our objects, instead of adding all of our objects to the stage, let's add them to the game container, right? But hear me out. Look at the order that I'm doing it in. I'm adding everything to the stage to the game container. Then I'm adding stuff to the game container. Should I do that first and add everything last? How do you think I should do it? And what do you think the effect is going to be? Well, let's try this out. So I'm going to take this and put it here. So I'm adding my hello label to my game container, not my stage directly, right? That's the only difference. Look, game container for both my hello label and my click button. And I'm going to press Command Shift B to activate my transpilation task. All right. So Command Shift B. It also has a watcher transpile from TypeScript to JavaScript. Right. And we should see almost no difference when it comes back to this. To prove this, if I go into my my console, so I want to go kind of inspect, right? Inspect, and I want to go into console, right? If I go to sources, you can see that inside my sources, I have scripts, and I'm going to go to my core script, and I'm going to go to my game.ts script, and up here, I should see game container. That means that it took my changes. Also, my game.js side, it's been transpiled. That's the most important thing. I've got my game container in here. And down on the bottom, I can see that my game container is adding these children. So these children, but notice that my game container is taking up the whole screen because my game container expands to fit everything that I put in it. Okay, here's a test. Let's move the X and Y coordinates of my game container somewhere else to prove to you that this is a container within a container. All right. So we're going to go back to here just to give you an idea of how it works. And let's move just before actually, it doesn't really matter. I'll move it here. I'll say that the game container dot X coordinate only is 30 pixels. It's going to offset everything by 30 pixels. Let's see how this looks, right? Take a look now. It doesn't, you can hardly tell, right? See this? You can hardly tell. Let's try it again, but instead of doing it this way, so that the whole game container shifts down every frame. So in my update function, I'll say something like this. I'll say game container dot X plus equals to 3, something low, right? So it's going to go on the X axis by 3, and then just to make it go diagonal, game container dot Y plus equals to 2, something really small. Save it and run it, and let's see what happens. And it's gone, right? Let's try that again. Refresh. So it's like I moved everything, both my button and my label, but I really didn't move my button or my label. My button and my label in the local coordinate space stay the same. What the heck do I mean by that? I mean that the game container itself has its own coordinate space, okay? So it's got a local coordinate space, and it's the parent container for my hello world label and my click me button is this new game container, okay? But my game container has its own local coordinate space from a global perspective. It's parented to the stage, right? So I can give it coordinates relative to the stage in terms of moving it around. So here's something I can do with the game container. I can make the whole game container start off to a negative value in the stage. I can say, well, let's move the game container. The X value in the game container will equal a minus value, a negative value of about 130 pixels, let's say, right? What this is going to do is going to offset the game container wherever I like. Now you might say, who cares? What does this prove? But imagine if I can put whatever graphic I want. It's almost like I got another world within a world. My game container is my scene. What I got to do now is wipe it out and fill it in again with whatever I want. That's the magic. That's what we're going to do with our game. We're going to wipe it out and fill it in again, right? So when I add stuff to the game container, I'm not going to add it to the stage, okay? I'm going to add it to the game container. The only thing that's going to be added to the stage is the game container. That's it, okay? Let's go back. So we've got this idea of the game container, right? But it's not really useful in this state. So that each game container is a derivative of, or it inherits from the create.js container class, right? And I'm going to call this class. Have its own update function, so I can update the entire scene, everything inside the scene, right? And I want to be able to separate elements that I'm going to put on that scene, right? I want to separate these elements so that different scenes, different game containers, I can make them live in scenes or some other kind of namespace. So let's create the object first. So inside objects, I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to call this file scene.ts. So make a new scene class. Now the reason why I'm putting it inside the objects class, because it is kind of a game object. It's a scene object, right? So again, here's how I'm going to define this. I'm going to say something like this: module, right? I'm going to call this objects because we're still in the objects folder, right? Inside there, I'm going to export a class that's called scene with a capital S, right? Which is going to extend, right, the create.js container class. Okay, that's what it does. Inside there, of course, we're going to start putting our basic things in there. We're going to have some private instance variables, if any, we don't know. We're going to also have some public properties, maybe. We're also going to have maybe some constructors. I'm just making some space here because we're going to need to. And maybe we're under the construction some kind of private instance, private methods, and some public methods. We don't know. We'll see how this is. But I already kind of scaffold this out when I code, just to think in terms of how I'm going to scaffold this out. Once I make the scene class, the scene object, because I'm watching with my task watcher, it automatically transpiles to JS, right? My JavaScript stuff. So if I look at the scene.js file here, you can see that all this code's already been written. As soon as I make a scene file. It's still pretty empty though, if you look at it, right, itself, because there's nothing in it right now. I need a constructor. One of the constructors that I'm going to make is the base constructor. I just use the constructor keyword, right? I don't have to send anything into it, but I should call the super constructor, which is the scene constructor, the container constructor. I need to do this. At the minimum, I need to do this. Okay, if that makes sense. I need some other public methods. Here's one I need. I need the update method. So it's going to be public, right? It's going to return void, and it's going to be called update. Capital U, or not update cache, update. And it's returning void, right? I need this. All scenes are going to have their own update method. Why am I doing this? Think about this almost like as an abstract class, right? If all scenes have an update method, I can just call the update method on the scene, and everything that's pushed into the update method gets called. The other thing is that my scene should also have some kind of main method, or the main method of the scene. I need to have that, and maybe some kind of stuff to initialize with. So let's do that too. So just like we do with Unity, I'm just making it very Unity-like. I'm going to create a public start method, which returns void. Right, that's part of my scene. And I'm also going to create some kind of public main method for now, right? We call public main, which also returns void. So there's just, all I'm doing here is scaffolding it out so you can see that there's different parts of my scene object. We're going to make this better. But for now, I want to add some comments, right? So even we don't want to say member of scene. The start method is where I can do some initialization, right? So initialize components here. Call them components because that's what they're going to be. Here I'm going to update elements in the scene. That's what this does, right? And kind of make it a little less like this, just so that it doesn't take up as much space for us. And the main method is where all the fun happens, right? Where I add stuff to the scene. So I add all the things to the scene here. So add elements in the main method, This is where I'm going to add everything. So when I want to add my player ship, I want to add my enemies, all that's going to be added here. I'm going to update them here, their positions, their firing arcs, everything else. And anything I need to initialize is going to happen in here. In order for me to do this, I'm going to call the start method by default. So I'm going to call start. So I'm going to say this dot start. Okay. That's my scene structure. It's just a prototype, if you will. Or question, do you think we can do an abstract class in JavaScript, right? Because I'm never going to instantiate an object of scene, right? I'm going to make special scenes. But for now, let's just make it this, and so we understand how it works. And then we'll go from, okay, cool. So I've got my scene, right? And I want to add this scene like to my project. And again, this is the first thing. I make my scene object. It gets transpiled. I got to go to my index.html. And before my game, yes, I'm going to add my scene script where I link my scene itself as an object into my my program. So I'm going to go there and paste. And then instead of scripts objects button, I'm going to say scripts object scene.js. So now I have my scene is linked to my project. Now we must test it. So I'm going to go into my game.ts in the core folder. Right, in the core folder, I'm going to go to my game.ts. And let's test it out. So instead of this game container, I'm going to replace it with scene. And it should be the same, right? So let's check this out. So I have my hello label and my click button. But I'm not going to have that here anymore. I'm going to put that in my scene. But I really don't have my scene yet. Yeah? I don't have my scene yet. Let's just make it like this first, and I'll explain in a second. All right, so here's my game container. And instead of my game container being a create.js.container, I'm just going to make it a objects.scene. Okay? It should act the exact same way, right? Objects.scene. And down in here, when I instantiate the object down here, my game container is going to be a new objects.scene. Add more things for it to work, or objects.scene. All I want right now is to prove to you that this will work exactly the same way as this always worked. I'm just going to get rid of this. I don't need it. And I've made my objects.scene, but everything is linked here in my game scene. And I want to take this stuff and put it inside of another scene, right, called my start scene. I'm going to make a start scene. I'm going to make a play scene. I'm going to make an end scene, right? Each of those scenes is going to contain different stuff. But I want to call it, I want to attach it to my main program, my game.js, okay? But one thing at a time. So let's just make this run first. So I'm going to save. And if I go back to the web, it should just be the same, right? And again, to test that I've transpiled, right? And you can see that this is the same. If you see my game container, if I scroll up in my, inside my scripts, if I look at my core, I can see that my game.ts file, now my game container is of type objects.scene. I know that the change has taken place. Okay, this is a great place to put it up on GitHub, so you have what I have, right? So I'm going to go to my code. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say added scene class. Okay, I'm going to go kind of clip this on here. And so I'm going to add all these, and then push. And then all these changes should be up on GitHub. So please look at github.com/Centennial College /COMP397 project template, and you should see everything up there. It should be the first repository you see now. All right, cool. So we've got our scene, right? And just to prove to you that it's up there on GitHub, be the first one you see right here, COMP397 F2017 project template. This is the one that I'm adding to right now. Okay, so you can follow me if I went too fast, and I probably did. All right, I got my core scene class, but I want to make additional scenes. Now this, my friends, I'm going to organize myself. It doesn't make sense for my scenes to be inside my objects. That doesn't make any sense. I'm going to make my own scenes namespace. Okay, so I'm going to right-click on scripts here, make a new folder, and I'm going to call it scenes. Okay. My scenes folder right now is empty, and I'm going to add some new files. The first one I want to make is my start scene. So I'm going to kind of go in here and go a new file. I'm going to call this scene, again, you can call it different ways. You can call it menu. I'm going to call it my start scene. You can call it whatever you like. So here's my start scene. So I'm going to call it start, right, .ts. Notice that it's scenes.start. That's going to be my namespace. That means I can have a lot of the same JavaScript files for naming convention, right, start. I can have start in 10 different folders, but as long as they're in a different folder, right? So how do I do this? How do I set this up? I need to make a module. Again, I'm going to call this the scenes module instead of the objects module, right? So that's the container for my scene. And then I'm going to make a new class. I'm going to export a new class, right? That I'm going to call start class. It's going to extend the create.js, right? Oh, sorry, I'm wrong. My objects, objects.scene. There we go. So you see, like I said to you, scene is never going to be used. It's just an abstract class, right? And what it's going to do for me is it's going to allow me to compare one scene to another. If start is a scene, then I can say, is my play a scene? Is my game end a scene? If they're all scenes, then I can do something with them, right? Okay, so that's what I'm going to do first. Then I'm going to put the same kind of logic in place. So the first part is going to be that I want to do my private instance variables, and if any. I always set this up like this, right? Instance variables, right? And then my public properties, if any. I don't probably have any right now, but I might. And then my constructors. I might have more than one. I might only have one. And then my private methods. And my public methods. Okay. I haven't said anything about interfaces in TypeScript. But just like we do in C# and Java, I can define interfaces, right? For now, though, I'm keeping it simple. I'm going to do all that optimization stuff in other weeks, right? For now, keeping it simple, structure that I need, right? Which I'm going to call the super constructor. That's all I need to do, right? Once I call the super constructor, it links to my start method. My start method is defined, right, already. But all I need to do is define it again. So I need three methods in my three public methods that I've defined. One is start. I don't have to make an override. I just can do it like this. Returns void and is public, right? Almost the same pattern, right? One is update, right? Which returns void. I'm just overriding them, right? And the last one is main. That returns void. Why do I have to do this? And why did I just duplicate everything I did in my scene class? Because the scene is just an abstract class. Here, I'm actually defining what those things are. I kept the other methods empty. That's all I've done, just like I would normally declare them in an abstract class. I don't have an abstract class yet. I just have another object. This is just infrastructure. Call it whatever you like. Pattern, right? Once I've got this in place, and this is what my scenes are all going to look like, right? Okay, let's start doing the start scene. So what I want is I want to take the label and the button from my game and put it in here. I'm going to go to this scene. I want to instantiate a new scene object, right, inside of my game.ts and go, we're just going to instantiate this object right here, right? And then I want to make a duplicate of this and change the objects out of my scene and switch between them. I want to be able to make a next button that goes from one scene to the other and back. I want to be able to navigate from one scene to the other. Once you have that in place, guys, you can make as many levels as you want, okay? Like I said, it may take us a couple weeks to get this perfect, but it's something we need to do. All right, so going back to this, I've got my scene. I want to grab some stuff from my game.ts. From now, you know what? I don't need to do any of this stuff, so let's just get rid of it all. I'm going to grab all this stuff for now. Actually, let's just grab the hello label down, right, this stuff. Cut it. This is inside my game.ts. I'm going to go back to my start.ts, my start scene, and put it in my main, like this. Now I'm getting a bunch of errors because I don't have a hello label that's part of my scene. I don't have any of that stuff. But I'm going to fix that in a second. Next, hold on a second. I'll show you the screen in a second. All this stuff, all this, this part right here, I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to cut it. Well, my asset manager, I can't get rid of. That is part of my scene. So my hello label, though, and my click button, I can. So I'm going to cut these out. I'm going to go back to my start.ts. And at the top here, in my private instance variables, I'm going to paste them in, and we're going to modify them in a second, right? Because they're all wrong right now, because I can't use lets inside of a class. All right, and I don't need my game container anymore. Let's get rid of this, right? And we're going to get rid of all this so that the main scene has nothing in it. Okay, all it is, so this is my game.ts, it's nice and clean. There's nothing inside my game.ts anymore. It just sets up my preloader, it sets up my start, and it updates my stage. Should it update my stage? Yeah, right? My stage gets updated because I'm going to add my current scene to my stage, right? Right now, there's nothing. I got nothing inside. I'm going to save. I'm going to go back to my start method. Here's my start.ts. And this is what it looks like. Okay, hello label. I can't declare stuff like this in a class. And this is a class. It's my start scene class, right? So I'm going to go here. And where it says hello label, I'm going to declare it hello as objects.label and click button. But I'm also going to make them private and put an underscore in front, because that's what they are. They're private instance variables, right, or private objects that I've created. Okay? That's inside of my start scene. And then further down, right, further down, I've got some different stuff going on. I got a start method, a start public method right here, right? And I've also got a main method, right? So in my start method, I can actually instantiate these objects. So I'm kind of splitting this up a little bit. So here's my hello label, and get rid of it, put it up here. And I'm going to have to classify it a little differently. I'm going to just get rid of this so you can see a little bit more, right? Method in my scene, I can do something like this. This dot underscore hello label is equal to new objects dot label with a hello world. Yay. Instead of we'll rename it hello label later on to, like, you know, the name of our game. But for now, I just want to put a hello label. I also want to instantiate other objects here. Any object instantiation, any initialization is going to be in my start method, right? So I'm going to take these other objects, this click button. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to cut it out. And I'm going to also put that up here. So this goes in here too. This _click button. Now here's a problem I have. Wait a minute. Asset manager. I need access to my asset manager right now, and I haven't made an asset manager class. Eventually I will, not today. When we continuously improve our game engine, because that's what I'm making. I'm making a new game engine, right? From scratch. Okay. And in my asset manager, I want to pass along my asset manager into my scene. Okay, so in my constructor, I don't have to pass it to every scene, but in this scene, right, in my constructor, I'm passing in my asset manager. So I'm just going to call it asset manager. It's going to be of type create.js right now .loadQ, right? And I'm passing it into the constructor, which means that it has to set up a variables of my asset manager up here. I don't have that yet, but I will make one. And I'll put that first. But before these other things, I'll make something called here. I'll say private. And I'll call this _ asset manager, which is of type create.js.loadQ. LoadQ, there we go. And inside my constructor, after my super constructor, I'm going to say, well, this _ asset manager is equal to the asset manager that I send in as a reference from my code. And then down here in my button, I'm going to say this manager is the one that's going to be in here. And the reason why I'm doing that is that way my whole preloading function, where I preload everything in my asset manager, references down the line into my my scene class. Okay, cool. So I've instantiated, I've initialized things in my start menu, right, or my start method. And down in here, what I want to do is, instead of game container, right? Well, there is no game container. This is a game container, right? So I'm going to replace game container with the keyword this. Right? So anywhere I see game container, I'm just going to take this. So game container, game container. There we go. I need to change these references. So this _hello label, right? And this _click button. I'm going to put them in. And I also have to ask this _click button. I've got to create a click event. And I also have to change the text string in my click button. So these are all the changes I have to make. Okay. I think I've got everything. So here's what my class looks like now. So again, I start off, I made my scenes module class that extends the objects.scene that I made before. I have an asset manager that's up here that I pass in, right? I need to do that every time I make a scene right now because I have to pass in my preloader. Whatever I'm preloading almost is like an array of objects that I'm preloading so that my scene has access to it. Right? And then I have my hello label, my click button. These are local private variables or objects that I'm only going to share inside my scene. Outside my scene. Right? I have my constructor, that's my asset manager, and it's going to call my start method. That's what I'm hoping. Right? Because in the super constructor, the super constructor of my scene class is my start method. Right? Okay, cool. So I've got this stuff. Now I've got to add, this is the first step. Now I got to add my scene class. I got to add my scene class to my index.html, right? So here's my scene class. And then in here, I'm going to take this, copy it, and scripts objects. I'm going to say scripts scenes because that's where my scene is. And instead of scene, it's going to be start. So now I've added it into my manifest and index.html, right? Once I've done that, then I'm going to go back into my game.ts. Here's my game.ts. And I got to do some trickery, right? All right, so here's my asset manager, and I want to instantiate an object of the scene. So down underneath these lets, I'm going to make another one. But I'm not going to call it start. I'm going to call it current scene. Hear me out, current scene. Because my current scene is going to switch. Right now, it's going to be start. But next time I click the button, it's going to be something else. Right, so let's make a new object, right? And I'm going to call this current scene. And what type is it going to be, people? Come on, let's see if you can bridge the gap here. Why did I make a scene class? What type is this going to be? What is it? Objects.scene, not scenes.start. Scenes.start is a scene. I could do that. But if it's an objects.scene, it could be any scene. So my current scene is always going to make a reference. It's going to be a reference to the scene that's currently loaded, right? So right now I'm going to say my current scene, right, is going to be of type objects.scene. Right, there it is. Once I've done an objects.scene, now I'm never going to instantiate this. I'm never going to say, well, equal to this, right? Not really. I'm going to do that in my state machine. For now, though, just to keep it simple, before I hit main, I'm going to say that I'm going to point to, right? I'm going to have to instantiate it here because it's the first time I'm doing it, right? So I'm going to instantiate it in start. I'm going to say something like this. Current scene, for now, right, is equal to a new objects. Is it? I haven't instantiated the scene yet, so I have to kind of do this for now, right? It's not objects.scene. It's the new scenes.start, right? And I have to pass in a reference to the asset manager. Notice that that works. Even though I've instantiated my current scene as a type of objects.scene, I'm making it a scenes.start because both the objects.scene and the scenes.start classes, right, have an is-a relationship with each other, right? So my start scene is a objects.scene, which is a container, so that they flow nicely like this. It's okay to do this. All right, so I've instantiated a new asset right here, but I haven't added it to my stage. I've just instantiated here. Woo, right? I just instantiated here. Then I add it to my stage down in here. Let's do that. Exact same way we saw already. So I'm going to say stage.addChild current scene. Right? That's all I need to do in my main, right? Because if I add my current stage to my current scene to my stage, then it should show everything that we had previously on the scene. Let me put this up on GitHub so you can look at the code right before I test it. So I'm going to add all this stuff to the staging area. I'm going to say added start scene. And you guys should have the code right now up on GitHub. So if you go to GitHub, and you refresh, you should see that under my project, there's 12 commits. And the last one I did was added start scene. So if you want to check out to see what it looks like, take a look at two things. Remember, in my scripts folder, I have to have my scenes class. I have my start scene. And you can see that the start scene has everything that I added in before. My hello label, my click button, all that stuff is here, right? But I'm only adding them. I'm adding them to the scene right here in the main method of my start scene. Okay. Now, question. If I wanted to make my label rotate, where would I do that? Well, in my start scene, in my update method. Because my update method is the one that I want to do. But I haven't referenced my current scene here. My game.ts, one thing I must do in my update function, I must update my current scene. So I'm going to say current scene, right, dot update. I need to do that because anything I put in my update needs to be updated and refreshed in my main update, which is inside my game.ts file. It cascades, right? I do it in my scene, and it cascades into my my game.ts file. All I'm doing again is scaffolding it out. I'm just scaffolding out my whole project, right? So you understand how this works. Okay, let's check and see if I got errors, and I probably do. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go here, and yep, we have a problem, right? Now we got to figure out what the problem is, right? So what is this problem that we're encountering? Let's take a look. So here's my console. Woohoo! All kinds of problems, right? It looks like thousands and thousands of issues, right? It says uncut type error, cannot read property button, a new button. Here's my get result is undefined, and it keeps saying that over and over again, right? Now, what the heck? What did we do wrong? Maybe, but it's the same error over and over again. Look, so that's an easy fix, right? My update method, it says uncut cannot read property updates. In my game.ts31, I'm calling my current scene update method, and I can't call the property. All right, that's the first thing that's giving me an error, right? I'm using my troubleshooting effectively. I'm trying to, right? So here's my update method. Okay, it says update elements in the scene, no problem, right? Scene.update. Objects.my current scene.update. That's what I'm calling. And let's take a look at my current scene. Here's my start scene. Here's my update method. Well, there's nothing in there, right? There's nothing in there, and that's okay. That I can't update my main scene because my update method doesn't exist. Okay, let's go back now into my scene. Objects.scene. Here it is. And let's take a look at my start scene. Here's my method. I've done all this stuff. So what the heck? What could it be, right? Could it be that I didn't transpile? Maybe. But if that was true, then it would be working right now, and it's not. No, I don't do null because I instantiated it down here. Look. What? Well, look. Here's my initialization. I got my click me button manifest, right? I make my current scene an object of type objects.scene, right? That's what I'm doing. And then initialization. Here's my initialization. Tell me if I should do something different in a different order. Here's my initialization, right? And then after I initialize, I go to my start method, and then I call current scene. I make my current scene, I pass in the asset manager. Should I do it here? And here's something else. Before it's instantiated, I call update, because update, my friends, happens immediately. It's asynchronous. Update is being called as soon as my current scene is being defined, right? So current scene is made here, objects.scene, and it's being called here, right? So again, this is some of the stuff that we might run into. So I'm putting it up to you. So if I, just to stop the problem for now, let's just get rid of this reference, because that's the big problem we have. And let's think about it. Here's my stage add child right here, right? That's where I'm adding it in. Does that take care of my issue? No. Well, we got one problem, and this is going to help us find the issue. So it says uncut type error, cannot read property, get result of undefined, right? Okay, get result of undefined. So did I do something wrong? It's trying to reference the button, all right? And we passed in a reference to the asset manager here, right? Assign a new, here's my asset manager up here, right up here, right? When the asset manager is finished loading, it's going to call my start method. And when my start method's done, it's going to make my canvas, right? And I pass it into my scene. Here's my current scene, which is of type container. It's going to pass in a reference to my asset manager, right? Which is going to go into my scene class, which is right here, right? My start class. And here's where I get it. And here's where I refer it to the actual object right here. I'm tracing it, right? But it's being called by my superclass. Well, hold on. I like your thinking. Well, let's think about this. Here's my start, and here's my hello label and my click button. I'm calling the start method right away. I'm making new objects, and I'm passing in a reference to the object, to the asset manager, right? But I haven't added these objects to the scene yet, right? I never add them in until down here, first time, right? Right? So so you see how I follow my logic. I first to say, well, did I pass it in? Yes, I did, right? Now you're saying I didn't call my start scene, but I actually have called it. I called it in my superclass. Because if you look at my superclass for the scene class, not the start scene, but the scene class itself, inside my constructor, I call my start method. Well, I never called my main method, right? Where do I call my main method? From my start method, right? Which means when I go down to here and I call this main method here, it's got to be called somewhere, either in my start method or somewhere else. Let's call it in my start method. That's what I was missing. Very good, right? So we'll call the main method now. Now I'm actually going to be, it's going to be this dot main. I'm actually going to be calling my main method, which is going to add stuff to the stage, which in turn is going to allow me to use the click button on click event, right? The click button didn't even exist before I added it to the stage. Okay, that's one potential problem. Let's see what it does. Maybe it'll cause other problems. Let's go back. All right, so I ran the check. I called my main. I like your thinking, but oh man, I still got this error. It's the same error. If we fix this error, everything else fixes, right? So it says uncaught type error, cannot read property in button.ts 22, right? Yeah.
The thing is, you're calling super first, right? On the start method of the constructor. Then when you call super, you're calling the start method, but there is no this.asset manager yet. So
right. So going back to our original constructor, which is inside my scenes method, very good. In my scenes method itself, not in the start, but the scene method itself, I'm trying to make it easy for myself, but I've made it harder for myself. So I got to take this reference out. I just need the structure. I don't need to do anything in my scene. That's why abstract classes aren't instantiated, right? Because of this kind of problem. Okay, now if I do this and I go back to my start.ts, I need to call, after my asset manager has been instantiated, I need to call this.start. Okay. Now it might fix the problem. You see that? I'm pointing it out because I've gone through this problem a bunch of times, and unless you trace, because we're making look in JavaScript, what we're really doing is a function within a function within a function within a function within a function. We're in callback hell, right? But in TypeScript, the really great thing is it tells us where the errors are right away, right? And it helps us navigate through the whole part. Let me just update this, and I'll say fix bug. I'll say fix bug scene class. And I'm going to add this all in, and you can have my code so you can see the differences, right? So that you don't have to run behind, because we're kind of timing out for now. All right, cool. So we've got this part done, right? I put it up on GitHub for you. Take a look, please. It's up here on GitHub. If I go back and if I go to code, you can see that if you go into my scripts folder, inside my scenes folder, inside my start scene, this is what it looks like right now, and this is the difference. Please take a look at the differences that I have compared to what you have. It looks like a lot of code, but really it's just setup. Setup, setup, setup. That's all I'm doing right now. All right, we want to fix one more thing. We did comment out something inside our game.ts file. We commented out our update. We need to call this update method. Let's put it back and see if we get that crazy error again. So save. I've just saved my update. Let's go back to my thing and see if I got a crazy error. Right? I told you. Let's click and see if it works. Uh-oh. Hey, one step at a time, right? It says the text string uncaught type error cannot set property text string of undefined. All right. Let's see what I messed up. Let's go back to my start. And I go here. And I have my click me button. That's the one I'm looking for, right? My click me button is the one, right? And down in here, it says my hello label label.text string is equal to goodbye cruel world, right? Here's my hello label.text string. Well, here's my hello label, right? Here's my hello label. And I instantiated my hello label as an objects.label object, right? And here up here is a hello label. Yes, keep going. Come on, tell me.
The problem is the D's. Now that you're inside the function.
Yes. What does this refer to, right? Does it refer to this hello label, right? What does it refer to, this hello label, right? So this click method, this click button on, this underscore click button dot on refers to the click button that belongs to this object, right? Okay, cool. And then we lose this context because we're inside an event handler, right? This context is lost. However, TypeScript allows us to fix this problem by using something called fat arrow functions. So instead of using function, get rid of that word, right? And we do something like this. We put open bracket, close bracket, fat arrow. And what that does is a new syntax, lambda expressions, like lambda expressions in C#, which allows us to maintain our this context, right, inside of our event handler. That should help. Let's see if it does. So, fresh, and click, and we're good. Looks like a little tricky syntax, but what it is what it's doing is actually passing a reference to the context. This little syntax, this fat arrow function, is passing a reference to the class this into the event handler. Otherwise, the event handler is its own function. So this refers to the event handler's namespace in the event handler's scope, not the greater scope of the class. So it's like, wait a minute, there's no hello label inside my event handler. I mean the event handler of this has to refer to the class this, not to the event handler this. Right? Because in JavaScript, everything is an object, right? It thinks the other way that I wrote it without the little fat arrow function, it thinks that this refers to the function that's the anonymous inner function that I'm calling as an event handler for my click button .on. You guys are gonna be great. It means you know what you're doing. Are we good? Let me put that up on GitHub so you have the change. So I'll say fixed click button, right? Click button bug in start scene. So I did. Push. I'll be okay. All right, good. So let's go back to this thing here and let's take a look what I can do. So this is interesting. So I'm able to create a current scene, update, call the update function, and do this asset manager stuff, right? But what I really want to do down here is I don't want to add my child to the scene every time. This is like the current scene. Add, and this is where where I think we have to end today, but I want you to leave you with this thing because I can't continue, right? I want to create a switch statement. And depending on what the current scene is, right, I'm going to switch, okay? I'm going to switch. And I'm going to have something where I'm going to change the scene, some method that changes the scene and assigns another reference to the current scene to another object, right? At the same time that I do that, I'm going to wipe out the current scene that I have and replace it, right, with my new object that I'm going to make. Okay? So let's think about this now. Here's what the last thing we're going to do. I want to make a config class. It's going to be in another config folder, right? Some kind of config or a configuration, a settings folder, or whatever you want to call it, right? And inside my folder, I want to create enumerations. I want to make enumerations for my start scene. I want to make enumerations for different scenes. When I call start, I mean this, whatever that thing is going to be, right? Because otherwise I'm going to say, play this scene or do this, right? So if I say, well, I'm going to check to see if my current scene, not current scene the way we have it, but if my current scene is start, then play this scene. If my current scene is play this scene. If my current scene is end, play this scene, right? And it's going to be like a Boolean. That's all it's going to be. It's almost going to be like an enumeration, 0, 1, 2, like an index, right? So I'm going to create an index for my scenes. My scenes are going to start at 0, and they're going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, how many scenes I want, right? So what do you recommend? I want to make a configuration file for this, right? And it's not going to be inside my scenes folder. It's going to be in a config folder, another namespace, my config namespace, right? Let's try and figure this out. What would you call it? So I'm going to make a new folder. We're going to call it config. Right, so this is all my configurations are going to go in there. Everything that I want is going to be my config namespace. What is my new file going to be called? Think about this. What am I configuring? Come on, it's just natural. What am I configuring? My configuration. I can't config. That doesn't make sense. I'm configuring something. What am I configuring? When I want to make a configuration, I want to create an enumeration, right? I want to make a configuration for, I want to make an enumeration or some kind of constants. Think of it whatever you like, right? For what? What am I making the constants for? For the scenes. So what am I configuring? Scene. So I'm going to call this scene, which makes sense because I'm configuring my scene. I'm going to make a scene file. So config.scene. It's the same name, but who cares? It's in a different folder. It means something different. Scene.ts. And inside my scene.ts, I'm going to make a new module, index.html, by the way. My new module is going to be called config, right? Because that's what it is. And I'm not going to make a new class. I'm going to export each individual one for now. We're going to make an enumeration later. Enumerations are kind of difficult or different in TypeScript. But so I'm just going to export each one of these things. So I'm going to export my const, right? Which I'm going to call, for example, start, right? And what it's going to be is it's going to be of type number, and I'm going to make it equal to 0. And I'm going to export my another constant, which is going to be play, and I'm going to put another number in there, which is going to be equal to 1. And the last one is another constant with an end with the number of 2. Okay. So what have I done here? I'm using the export statement 3 times to demonstrate a couple things. One, in my module, in my namespace, I do not have to put classes. I can put whatever I want. Utility methods. I could put variables like this, constants, whatever you want. Those things, just like an enumeration or just like non-object-oriented code. I could shift between functional programming and object-oriented programming when I need to. Unfortunately, we have to do that, right? So let's talk about this. I need to add this to my manifest. So this should come before everything else up here, like that level, right? So I'm going to copy this because I should have access to it everywhere. So copy this and up here. This is all my configurations happen up here. So it's scripts.config, right? .scene. So my scene config happens first. Attached it. It's available inside my scenes file. So if I go to start scene or inside my core, right? This is what the effect I want. I can start looking at, right, what my current state is, right? So current state, you know, I call it whatever you like. I'm making a state machine, right? But let's call it current state, okay? We can change the names later. So here's my let current state, which is a number, right, be equal to, and this is interesting, right? I can assign it here, or I can assign it somewhere else. Let's just make it here. We'll do it normally, okay? So I won't mess you up. So current state is a number, okay? Because that's what our state machine is. It's just switching between numbers, right? And then down in here, before my start, here's my start. Before my main, I'm going to set the current state. So I'm going to say current state, right, is equal to config dot scenes. Oh, look at this, right? Config dot, right, start. That's, why do I have to do, why is it like this, right? Why is it like this? Start, config dot start, right? As opposed to config dot scenes dot start. Why wouldn't it be that? I don't have a class. I don't have anything surrounding this. There's nothing containing this start, right? Start is a constant, right? And that's what I want. I want something as simple as that. So config start, right? And this start is telling me what my current scene is. Now, inside of here, right? I'm going to leave this alone for a second. I'm just going to comment it out, okay? Inside here, I can make a switch statement. And I know I'm running over time, guys, but forgive me. Where I put in here, right, the current state. Here's my current state, right? And inside there, I want to say something like this. Case state is equal to, this config.start, right? It's written like this, config.start, right? And do something, right? Does that make sense? Otherwise, let's make some other cases. Let's say my case is config.play, do something else. And let's say my case is config.end, do something else. There's your state machine, my friends, right? Now it's not working, but let's make it work for the first state, right? So I'm going to take my state, my class, my add child, current scene, do something like this. Funny, not the way I've done it already. I'm going to take this current scene case statement, right? Notice I'm saying stage.addChild current scene, right? But I'm going to do that every single time. I'm going to go there and do this thing. So this doesn't make any sense here. This, it's at the end, right? Down here. So at the end, I add my current scene to the stage, whatever that current scene is. All right, but now this, instead of it being instantiated up here, new scene start, right? I don't do that here. I do that down in here. The current scene now is the start scene. And if I was going to do the same thing, I'm going to comment it out so you can see this. Let's suppose I don't have this scene yet. Well, let's suppose I want to make the play scene. My current scene would be play. I don't have that yet. Right? Do you understand? I'm rearranging current scene to be something else. And let's say this would be end. I don't have the end scene yet, but I'll make it later. The other thing you need to do in my current scene is a couple things, right? When I instantiate my current scene, right, and I add it to the stage, I add it down here, right? My config start is what I'm doing, right? So the only time that I'm going to switch my current state, right? The only time I'm going to go to main is immediately, but I got to get back there again, right? Which means somewhere in my current scene, in my update method, I'm going to say that my current state, right? And my current state is going to switch. I got to be able to somehow trigger my current state being changed inside of my new scene, which means I have to have access to my current state in my new scene, which means that I got to pass in my current state inside either my constructor or the update method of my current scene. When I do that, I've made all the links. I can say my current state now is play. It's going to go to my main method, right? My update function, my main method, I have to trigger me going back into my main method to check it again. I have to check. The only time I want to go to my main method is when I tell it to for my current state, when I unupdate, something like that. Okay, think about it, right? I got to be able to get and call that main method only when I want to switch scenes. That's the only time I'm going to call it. I'm calling it once for the first time in my game.ts file, and I'm going to call it every single time in here, right? When there's a scene change. Okay, I'm not there yet, but we're going to get there next week. Bear with me, but let's see if this thing works the way it is. Right? That's the first step. So again, I've got my current config, my current scene. I'm adding it to my asset manager. I'm actually adding it to the scene, and down here, I'm adding the child to the scene. And if everything goes well, I'm good to go. Right? Does anyone not understand something? If you do, I don't have a lot of time, but if you want to see me after class, I can explain stuff. For now, though, rest assured that next week we'll finish off our state machine, and I'll have some movement in place where I can actually go from the next scene to the next scene. In the middle scene, we'll put in all of our game that we're going to be building together for the next few weeks. Okay? So I'll see you guys next week. Thanks.